Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Snowy's Camping Show. As usual, joined by myself and Lauren. I feel like I have the same intro every time I do it. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I feel I got an extra shortbread cookie with my coffee this morning from the barista.
Really?
It was quite it's just something small, right? They're only a tiny little cookie. They're
I was going to say, when you say shortbread cookie, aren't they like a 10-cent piece?
Yeah, they're like 50-cent piece. Yeah, like it's 50 cents, 10 cents a bit tight. But I got an extra one in my cup, so it's
it's like a whole $1 of shortbread.
I know, winning, and nothing else is. I should touch wood. Thankfully, this desk is wood. Nothing else has gone wrong so far this morning. So the day is looking positive. So
that's
anyway,
awesome.
We're already off on a tangent.
We are.
If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel via YouTube, your favourite podcast app, and you can join in on the conversation in our Facebook group, Snowy's Camping Banter, which is growing every day. Lots of awesome questions and awesome people in there answering all the awesome questions, heaps of tidbits and advice on all things camping. And that's where our episode today is kind of based off of the Facebook group, because we thought we'd start off this season. This will be episode, I'm not sure, we're recording ahead of time, 3 or 4 or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
In season 4, I still feel weird saying 4, that we've been around for that long.
I know.
And because we weren't overly organised and we're all wearing lots of hats, we thought let's ask everyone else what they want us to talk about. So we did a Q&A session, and we got enough questions to do 3 Q&A episodes.
Yeah.
So this is the wrap up on that. I haven't had a look back on the post. I think there's probably more questions there. But
Yeah, we can't keep looking, otherwise we'll just have to keep answering them.
I think we'll draw a line in the sand.
Yeah,
here,
we'll
so
save them, maybe do one a bit later on in the year.
Because we've got a few other ideas coming up. So Q&A Session 3, these are all questions off of Facebook. I don't know if there's any on here from YouTube. Some from YouTube as well. Most of it's from Facebook. So these are questions from you, awesome listeners. And I've had a very quick look through these questions and not placed much thought into the answer. So we're pretty much, as we always do,
on the fly.
I'm going to answer this on the fly.
Well, at least everyone gets our raw, organic, you know.
Do you know I had I got
nothing curated here.
No.
Just winging it.
No, there's nothing polished. Some people come to me.
That sounded a bit rough, actually, didn't it?
What's that?
I didn't sound very sophisticated. I think I just sounded real rough when I just said that.
Oh no, it's all right. That's what we are. I had an information night. I'll leave that one parked. I had an information session for my daughter's school last night. One of the teachers come up and introduced himself to me just randomly and said how he loves the videos and the podcast. He listens to it to go to sleep. So, and it was a nice conversation, because it's always positive things they've got to say about it. They've actually used the stuff that we create to help them buy stuff or just enjoy listening to us talk rubbish. Are now. But
someone provided checkout feedback today when they placed an order saying that they thought we deserved a pay rise, and I agree with that. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, we forwarded that straight to the big boss. So thanks for that feedback. No, but it is nice to get that feedback when people actually enjoy.
It is.
When we're just really sitting down rambling about what we like anyway. So
correct.
Anyway, let's get into the episode. So first question, I'll let you kick it off.
Cool. So first question is Kevin T from Facebook. What is the best shelter for weekend camping from rain and sun? A gazebo or a tarp setup? Many thanks. I will quickly say that we've done a couple of episodes on shelters / gazebos already. First one was episode 38, which was summer / sun shelters specifically. And then we did episode 59, which was more specifically rain shelters and wet weather shelters, because not all gazebo / shelters are going to be suitable for both necessarily. Or most will be suitable to provide you shade, obviously, but not every single one is going to be suitable for rain and stuff like that. As I feel like we always say with some of these questions, need a tiny bit more info. Sort of, it depends on how big your car is and or what your camping setup is and your pack size and weight sort of limitations. I'm assuming when you say weekend camping, you're talking about, you know, heading off on a Friday after work or school and coming back on a Sunday night. So it's not a super long trip. I feel like everybody has Austrail style gazebos.
Yep.
And they've been around for bloody ages, like decades.
Yep.
And there's a reason why they've been around for so long.
They're useful.
They're useful, but they're also quite big and quite heavy.
Yep.
And if it's just popping away for a weekend or you've got limitations in the space, like you're not taking a trailer or something, they're probably not going to be your best option.
No, they're versatile, but they are bulky to transport. I guess a Tarp's compact. If you've got the time, it'll take a bit. It's going to probably, to summarise it down a bit, it's going to take a bit longer to set up a tarp, but you're a bit more versatile around how you can angle that for sun and rain. I think with sun, always have something with ventilation, because if you enclose it too much, it's going to be hot. Gazebo is probably easier to set up. So for a quick weekend away, you don't want to spend hours setting up some big tarp and you'd have to pull it down again. But there's other gazebo options, and there's one behind us here at the moment on our sort of garage shelves behind us, the Quest Air Gazebo. Yep. So that gets around that pack size and weight. They're about a third or half the size and pack size of the Austrail gazebos. You do pay more for it.
Yep.
But I think for a weekend getaway, if you've got the space, then a gazebo will provide you probably with all you need.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that, they are waterproof, but they've also got 4 large open sides. So you're probably limited as to, you're not going to be able to put stuff up against the side of the gazebo and just assume it stays dry, because unless the rain's coming directly downwards.
Unless you're going to invest in something like the Zempire Aerobase. Thank you. I was going to say Aerodome, but so that's a tent, the Aerobase, because they have a much higher waterhead rating and the walls also come with a high waterhead rating and things like that. So if you're looking for a really good all-rounder, the Zempires are excellent from that respect.
Yep.
But I think the Quest one that you've done a video on recently, which is relatively new for us, it's a little bit more compact in the sense that its footprint and shape and size is more similar to those like Austrail 3 metre gazebos, right? Yeah. Whereas the Zempire ones, and I think Zempire do one called a roadie base, which is a little bit smaller. It's sort of like a cross between the Aerobase and the Quest gazebo, a little bit smaller and more compact, and there's heaps of accessories for that particular
They're designed to go
shelter.
Up against a car, I think.
They're standalone, but you can get attachments that can hook to an SUV or a four-wheel drive or something like that, which can be really handy, especially if you're just popping away for the weekend and you're a car camper. You can get these attachments that create a fully weatherproof, sealed tunnel against the back of your open SUV into your gazebo, and you can get walls and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so
I reckon Zempire
it would just I was just going to say, so the considerations would be pack size and weight, and if you're just popping away for a weekend, how quick and easy is it to set up, because you don't want to be wasting time doing that on a short trip.
Yeah, Zempire is the top shelf option. Easy options, tarp, some poles, guy ropes and pegs.
But a bit longer in time.
Otherwise, the 3x3 gazebo, if you can transport that, is probably the most affordable, straightforward option. If you can afford a bit more and want to save space, then the Quest Air Gazebo is probably sits right between the top shelf Zempire option and the Austrail gazebo.
Yeah, and I'd say that the air gazebos are going to be a better bet if you want a good all-rounder for all sorts of weather situations.
Beach and everything as well. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Tom on Facebook is another Zempire question. I don't think an episode goes past where we don't mention Zempire.
Yeah, no.
We'll reiterate again. We're not. We just like the products. They're not paying us.
Correct.
I've got a Zempire water bottle sitting. Honestly, it's not sponsored.
It genuinely isn't. Yeah.
Is the Zempire Pronto V2 10P, which is a two-room family camping air pole tent, the best option for a bloke with a bad back to quickly erect a tent, or should I be considering another option? I think it's a good option, but you might want to consider a 12-volt pump.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. Yes, definitely, but you seriously don't want to be doing the old heave-ho to manually pump it up.
Yep.
An air tent with a 12-volt pump, Bob's your uncle, bad back, that's like piece of pie, the best, quickest camping setup you have. That
being said, even if you do use the pump, you're only really bending over to do that for a few minutes and you're almost done.
And do you need to even bend over? Like, don't you just hook it in and you just can sort of stand there and wait?
The hand pump. If you're using the hand pump, it's a few minutes.
True, but you're sort of bending over and moving back and forward, and it does sort of put it, unless you've got some kids, just slave labour.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
So I reckon go with an air tent, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
The Pronto being the bigger one, what's the smaller one? Is that a 5 or a 4?
The
Pronto
5.
5 is probably, if you're, I've made an assumption you're camping by yourself. If you're with a family, then probably the 10p. If it's just you, then maybe look for a smaller tent's going to be easier to set up.
I mean, the 5 is great if it's sort of, just couples or even a very small family. The walls are a bit more vertical, but if you want something that's a lot bigger and has the 2 rooms, then of course the 10p is a great option.
Yep.
It's probably worth mentioning as well that a lot of people do find those 12-volt pumps for the air tents as a bit of a barrier because their price point can be quite high. But you can, even if you have a normal air compressor or someone with an air compressor, you can actually get Boston valve attachments for air compressors. They're not sort of, we don't sell them, and I don't think you can sort of get them from a brick and mortar reputable retailer, but places like eBay and Amazon and things like that, you can get those attachments. Just be mindful.
Conscious of the PSI.
Correct.
Inflating it to.
Yep.
If you blow up your air pole because you used your air compressor.
Yes, that is true.
Then that's not covered under warranty. So just want to put a disclaimer in there.
That is a good point.
But airframe tent with a 12-volt pump going to cost you a bit more, but you're probably going to enjoy your camping trips.
Yeah, definitely.
Next.
Derek from Facebook, what is the best all-rounder when it comes to gas stoves / kitchen setups?
I think for all-rounder, this is a big debate. I'm going to go down the
big debate.
Multi-fuel path, but I think the best all-rounder is probably one that's been in the range for a long time, and it was Primus. It's now Companion. Their high output 2500 BTU
2-burner
stove.
high output.
Just like a best all-rounder that's really easy to use is an LPG gas stove.
Yeah.
There's no mucking around. Its setup is easy. If you can transport a gas bottle easily, that's a pretty straightforward, all-round, easy to use stove without spending too much. And then team that up with some sort of stand or table that works for you, bearing in mind that you don't want to like a plastic table. You want something with a little bit of heat resistance for it to go on.
Yep.
So there are some kitchens that you can get, or sort of kitchen table combinations. Check out the range online. Needs to fit in with your camp setup. But I would say it was got gas stove / kitchen setups. I mean, gas stove's an easy one to answer. Go for an LPG stove, and I think the Companion range or the Coleman range.
I do think LPG stoves are the best in terms of being all-rounder, for sure. I mean, swap and go bottles, they're a lot bigger, but they're super accessible if you don't want to have to do gas refills and all of that sort of stuff.
But then the kitchen setup, that's almost a loaded question because it depends how far you want to go. I mean, if you want to go all out, then get a cupboard with a bench top. You can store your stuff there, then a prep table, and then a table to sit at. If you've got the space to cart all that.
That's true.
And a gazebo, something to set it all up underneath. I'm quite happy with a stove stand.
Yeah, and I think it depends when I think to myself, what's the best all-rounder? I'm thinking about a setup that if you're a car camper or you're a four-wheel driver or like you've been camping for ages or you're just starting or you've got a low budget or you've got a high budget, just something that anybody could use. And from my perspective, that is just a really basic, say like a 4-foot folding table, for example, blow molded, plastic, easy, super easy clean. That's enough space for you to put your stove on one side and have a little bit of prep space on the other. The only thing to consider with that is wind shielding, because obviously with a blow mold table you don't have wind shielding. So consider that if your stove doesn't have wind shielding sort of built into it, which most of them do. And then just a couple of plastic tubs from Bunnings. Or a hardware store or, Kmart, Target, whatever. You have one with your cutlery and your cookware and, all of that sort of stuff, and your other one with food. And they just slide under your table and there you go. Yep.
And stackable tubs just go in the back of the car.
Stackable
get all
tubs
the
in the
same
back of the
tubs so
car.
they're all just stuck up.
Yep, absolutely.
I think I'll mention too that Quest have got those tables, and I think others are starting to bring tables out now as well that have the metal top and a bit of mesh. So that's kind of a combination, using it as a table plus good for a stove stand as well.
For sure, and also easy clean.
Yep.
But I think you can get tables and camp kitchens and things that have got pantries built into them and all of that sort of stuff, and that's really excellent and really handy. But also be mindful that you've still got to transport the stuff that you want to fill the pantries up with somehow. So then you've got something that you're packing your food and your kitchen stuff in that you're then taking out to put into your pantry. So why not just simplify your life and just pack tubs that you can
go straight in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Start small and build up from there, because no matter who you speak to, they'll think they've got the best setup, but have probably also got something in the back of their head that is going to make their setup even better.
Yeah.
And no one's setup's going to be the same.
Correct. Yeah.
Next question, Andrew on Facebook. Any plans for a New Zealand store?
No.
No, I wouldn't.
Sorry, Andrew.
I wouldn't say it's never been mentioned around the office, but no plans for a New Zealand store.
I've personally never heard it be mentioned.
No, I think just because New Zealand's so close and we've
I'd move to New Zealand and be a store manager for sure.
But no, we are always focused on making sure we've got our own backyard polished and orders out quickly and customers served here before we
at this stage, evil plans to take over the globe.
Look, who knows what the future holds? So
who knows? We did have an inquiry from a customer in Germany the other day who wanted a European store. I was like, oh, we'll consider that.
Different product mix.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually. Anyway, next, Coralie. Also another, I think Coralie's been around for ages. OG podcast listeners.
Yeah, yep.
Even before podcast, I think she was all over the product reviews and stuff.
Oh, I think she was. She's got her own YouTube channel with a few videos. We get a few mentions in there.
Yes. So Coralie has asked, what exactly is car camping? I've used the term to refer to camping where I sleep in the actual car, but I've heard it mentioned in other ways that make me think perhaps people use it in a different way. Okay, well, I'll just tell you what my definition is.
I'm going to Google it.
Okay, but I'm just going to share my definition and then you can say whatever the official one is.
That's right, yeah.
Don't interrupt me.
Oh.
Sorry, in-house joke.
Well,
some of you might already know about it, but anyway. So for me, car camping is, because I think of all the different sorts of camping. Car camping is where people have a normal car, which I'm not considering as a four-wheel drive. A normal car, two-wheel drive, whether that be a hatchback or, a sedan or just your everyday daily driver sort of car. Where people are having to pack all their gear and then unpack it and set it up or carry it in or something along those lines. If you sleep in your car, for sure, like that could also be car camping. But when I think about car camping, I'm just thinking about people who need to literally pack everything, mattress, sleeping bags, tents, and then pull it all out of their car and then set it up and then pack it all back in their car and then drive home.
I'd pretty much agree with that. Whether you sleep in the car or not doesn't change the definition of car camping. It's using your regular everyday runabout vehicle to go camping, which, as you say, means you've got to pack it all in and then unpack it and then pack it back in and bring it home again.
Yeah, and the reason why I sort of don't consider four-wheel drives and other vehicles like that is because there's very different camping gear available for people with four-wheel drive. Things like awnings and, pull-out kitchens or rooftop tents, or there's just a whole range of the camping and outdoor gear that isn't possible if you own a Prius, right?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of where that point of differentiation comes for me. And I would consider people who car camp to be sitting in like a bit of a crossover zone between compact camping gear and hiking gear, because most of that is applicable.
Okay. I would agree with that. I've got the definition. One thing that comes up here when I Google car camping meaning is this is a website called humanoutside.com. Quite simply, car camping is quite simply just that, camping via your car. So not in your car, via your car.
Yeah.
People use the term to differentiate between camping with your car, backpacking, backcountry camping, or RVing. So it sounds like it might be an American-based site, but I think, well, that's our opinion.
Yeah.
Whether it's right, wrong, or otherwise.
And sleeping in your actual car is definitely car camping still, but I think it does extend to people who also need to take tents and separate bedding and want to sleep external to the car.
Yep. Can I have a brief aside? You know how our editor of the podcast said there's all this noise and stuff in the background and he wants us to stop fiddling with our pens and doing all of that? I reckon it's you playing with your paper. You were trying to blame me. Yeah, that.
Oh,
see, there you go.
You're right.
So I just
Larry,
wanted to go on the record
It's
that Lauren was in here poking her tongue out saying, ha, it's me, because apparently my pen's scratchier than hers, when the actual fact is huge. So just put your papers down. Put your papers down.
I pick up and reshuffle my papers
Don't put it down.
all the time.
Put it down.
Sorry, Larry, listening to this after we've recorded it and raging.
We've brought everyone into that conversation.
It's my paper shuffling.
Next question, Julie on Facebook. The pros and cons of expensive Zempire, again, roof covers versus a large overhead tarp with poles for reducing heat and protecting tent. We have the Delta Force V2, but are yet to use it, waiting for cooler weather. So the Delta Force V2 is their big canvas
we don't range that one at this stage, but it does seem to be like quite popular. And I think someone, I feel like potentially Cameron is coming to mind. Can't remember what his name is, but he posted a walkthrough tour of his, I'm pretty sure it was a Delta Force, and he had the projector and was watching the Snowy's camping show when he was away camping. So there is a video of that on our Facebook group if you want to check out what that tent is. For me, the pros are that it's made for your tent. And that it just fits to your tent. It has attachment points. It fits perfectly. It's designed to protect that particular tent.
You don't need extra poles.
You don't need extra poles. You don't need it. It's a roof cover. It attaches to your tent. The cons of that are, as you've potentially highlighted, that it's going to be, or possibly, I haven't actually looked into the cost comparison, but it's going to be potentially a bit more expensive than a cheap tarp alternative. The pros of the tarp cover is that it has the potential to be cheaper. The cons are that it's going to take a lot more gear. So you've got your tarp, you've got all your poles, you've got your guy ropes, you've got extra pegs. That means you're also going to have extra guy ropes and pegs around your campsite that you need to be careful of. That's going to be taking up space. Potentially, depending on the weather, whether that be like rainy and whatever, it's just an extra thing that you're having to manage independently of your tent to make sure it's staying up and the integrity of it's all intact and things like that. Still an excellent option. I think the tarp things are for any tent, but if your particular tent model has a roof cover designed for it, go with that.
It's going to make it easy.
Yeah.
I'll only add two things to that. I agree with all of it. A tarp, individual tarp setup has another use. It can just be used as a tarp by itself.
That's actually a really good point.
And you can also, if you set up a separate tarp, control the gap between the tent and the tarp. If you're able to raise it up a bit higher, that can probably help to keep the tent cooler as well. But as you mentioned, you've got all of that extra setup and gear to take with you, whereas the roof cover just fits. So I'd say if you can afford it, then the roof cover's a good idea.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point that you were saying about how it's a tarp setup would be multi-use, even just a shelter at the beach or something, or a tarp in and of its own to wrap something up with or whatever. And that temperature control, they're good points. But yes, leave my paper alone. Do not shuffle and tap them. So I guess it would depend what your priority is, what's more important to you, whether or not those potential pros or cons of a tarp shelter, what's more important.
It's that whole convenience thing, isn't it? You pay for convenience.
You do pay for convenience, But again, it's single use. So, very valid points there, Ben. Julie, that sort of probably didn't really make your decision any easier.
Enjoy camping in your Delta Force, though. I haven't actually had a walk through those tents, but those big Zempire tents are pretty
They look amazing.
They're awesome.
Yeah. Sky on Facebook, what are some things to consider when building a tradie trailer into the ultimate camping trailer? Pull out kitchen storage, power, solar on the roof or pop-up tent, water storage, upright, slide fridge, loo, shower set up, 270 awning, the works.
I'm going to start by saying weight, because you can strap all of that onto your vehicle and you're going to have a very heavy vehicle.
Correct.
Which might be all right. You need to have a think about
trailer, she's setting up a tradie trailer.
Sorry, trailer, sorry. Even still, weight. Be wary of what your trailer's rated to, because you add all this on and before you know it, you've got a very heavy trailer that you need to tow. So weigh everything up. Yeah, that'd be the first main consideration.
And also, you know what your towing capacity is and all that.
Towing capacity of your car. Yep. Yep.
Depends on what tradie trailer you're getting. I'm assuming when you're talking tradie trailer, you're talking about the ones with closable hatches. So either you're going to get the full box, so it's like the cube, or you're going to get the triangular ones. The triangular ones might be a really good option if you are wanting to save weight.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like, I mean, my brother and sister-in-law, when they were younger and pre-family, I think they got one and started trying to build it out. And I think they just found it was just a little bit tricky with that sort of A-frame or the triangular one to do everything that they wanted to do. Depends on whether or not you're a family or just a couple.
It's a bit of a hard question to answer because there's so many variables, and this is one same with the kitchen setup, right? You speak to everyone and they've all got their own. Those who've got a trailer have all got their own way of setting it up that works for them. But
I guess the benefit of having a trailer like that is that if you do get a rooftop tent, you can put it on your trailer and then it's not on your daily driver. So if like, for example, you've got the Patrol, right? That's a daily driver for you. If you had a rooftop tent on it, it would just be horrible. Whereas if you had a tradie trailer with a rooftop tent, you know what I mean? So there is that versatility there. I think it depends on the kind of camping that you want to do. I mean, it sounds like to me, just based on your question, that you're mostly wanting to do off-grid, sort of more bush, like sort of getting out of it a bit. So you do need to be really self-sufficient.
Team it up with your car. If I got a trailer, I think I'd probably lose my roof rack because I could load a lot of stuff on the trailer and potentially become more streamlined, and it also enables you to distribute the weight. So I'm going back to weight again, I suppose. So have a think about how you distribute that weight and how you're going to set it up at the campsite. So you don't want to put a slide-out kitchen in the back of your car if it means you've got to remove your trailer to use the slide-out kitchen. So you've got to think about the geometry of when you pull up to camp. Do you want to take the trailer off, or do you want to leave the trailer hooked up and just set up camp there and then? So that's going to you're going to need to think about how the back door opens on your vehicle, what you store in there. Try and keep everything
if
low.
You're going to have a fridge, is your fridge going to be in your vehicle all the time in the back of your car? In which case you're going to have a dual battery setup. If you're going to have a dual battery setup, then maybe consider having solar panels on the roof of your vehicle and you're going to have your fridge in there as well. Otherwise, if nothing's going to be in your vehicle and everything's going to be in your trailer, then you need to consider if you want to put a rooftop tent on, solar panels, in which case you'll probably need something like the hardcore croc skin ones that you can set up anywhere and move around your campsite on the little arms, as opposed to a fixed solar on the physical trailer itself.
Yeah, I think that's a good point actually. If you keep your powered items, battery, solar, things that require power, so your fridge in your vehicle, and your non-powered stuff in your trailer, then it allows you to operate independently, because you might want to take that car without the trailer once you get to camp as well. So we're kind of talking on the fly here really, and I don't know what the answer is. These are all just things I would consider, but have a think about how you're going to use both of those things either together or independently when you camp as well. Do you want to leave your trailer set up as camp, pull up, take it off, set up camp, use your vehicle to drive around? In which case I mean, if you're going to do that, you probably need a battery in your car and your trailer. Whereas if you just have your 12-volt stuff in your car, you only need your battery in your car. Not both.
And I think consider as well how much of your camping gear or how much of your camping setup you might use for day trips. So like I know here in SA we've got a couple of big drive-on beaches like Selix and Aldinga where people will get up and head down there at 8 o'clock and be there until 6 p.m. at night. And when we do things like that, our fridge comes with us. And so if you're setting up a tradie trailer or something like that where your fridge is in your tradie trailer and all your solar power and your battery systems are in the tradie trailer, what happens if you want to go and do a big day trip like that somewhere? Does that mean you have to pull everything out? So just consider what stuff you might want to use for day trips or daily use or have more ready access to, and what stuff is strictly going to be for trips. I think if you have a cube trailer, it's going to be a lot more convenient for you in terms of packing space and then doing things like pull-out kitchens and things like that.
I reckon if it was me, just after this conversation here right now, if I was to go down a path to think, all right, that's what I'm going to consider, my vehicle would be my fridge and most of my probably personal effects, maybe kitchen gear and that sort of thing. The trailer would be pull-out kitchen, bulky swags, I'd have solar panel on the car, I think, because I wouldn't have anything on the roof rack. That might be a reason to leave the roof rack, or maybe just put roof bars instead of a full roof rack, which are quieter to drive in, quieter to drive with, and just put a solar panel on the top there to get the batteries charged with an auxiliary. And the trailer would be largely set up such that I could pull out the kitchen, maybe have a rooftop tent on there and an awning on the trailer, and I could set that up as my little campsite, unhitch the car.
Yep.
I could back the car in next to that if I wanted, so I've got access to the fridge, so I don't have the drawbar in the way of accessing the fridge.
Yep.
And then I've got the car independent to drive around. That's thinking literally in the last, 3 minutes that we've been talking about it, how I might start to go down the path of setting it up.
Yep. I would agree with that, definitely. I think that's probably the direction that I would head as well.
Yep.
And potentially even I reckon that's sort of what that's where I would lean towards as well.
Cool.
All
right, next question. Gerard, there's a two-part question. Firstly, tips for keeping vermin, as in mice, rats, snakes, ants, and cockroaches, out of your camping gear while both in storage and whilst being used on the campsite. I could not imagine anything worse than rolling out a sleeping bag for the first night and realising a mouse had made home in there during the previous month while in storage. There's a lot to answer there. I think the main thing is try and store it in a airy kind of space. Inspect it regularly while it's in storage, and maybe check it before you go camping.
Yeah.
I know at home, for example, our little garden shed, I get little cockroaches and stuff in there all the time because I just stuff tarps and all sorts of, bird netting and that sort of stuff in there, and it creates lots of little spaces for these cockroaches to live in. I don't really care because it's a garden shed, right?
Yeah.
Plus I've also got manure and fertilizer and all those things that they love. My camping gear is stored in my shed, which doesn't have all that stuff in it. So I'm not attracting vermin and stuff for that smell. And it's stored in such a way that there's a bit more ventilation around it, I suppose. The other thing is use it often. That way the vermin don't have a chance to settle in. When you're at the campsite,
I just quickly before you go on to the next one, I was going to say, I don't think there would ever be a time where I arrive to a campsite and set up and be like, oh my gosh, like this is in this condition, because I've always checked before I go. And that if you get into the habit of making that part of your trip preparation, is that you just check your gear when you're at home, then you're not going to run into those sorts of issues.
Absolutely. Yep. At the campsite is harder because I always like to think I'm in their backyard, they're not in my backyard. I'm setting up on their home. So as I always say to the kids, you probably need to learn to just live with it, be aware that those things are there and live with it. Main things I say is food. Don't store food in your tent. Store it locked up in your car. Food scraps, clean them away from your tent. Put them, if there's any food scraps, put it in the bin, carry it out preferably. But even if it's just little crumbs, the kids have eaten a biscuit and there's little crumbs, just maybe don't get them to do it inside the tent or right outside the tent. And as for snakes, mice, snakes is just don't camp next to,
snakes are there. Do you know what I mean? Make lots, like most, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever really had an issue with snakes. And I think for the most part, you make enough noise and, there's a lot going on around a campsite. Sometimes I've had odd occasions where there has been a brownie or something. I think there was one of the trips we went on not too long ago. There was a tiger snake that just sort of slithered through camp. But, we're in a clearing in the middle of the bush and it just went from one side of the clearing to the other and just kept going about its business, and you just happen to be on its pathway. It's not interested in hanging around or bothering you or whatever. But there's only going to be certain times of year where that's really applicable, right? Except obviously if you live in Queensland or somewhere tropical and you have those like big, I was going to say a bad word there, but the ones that will literally eat your dog. Don't know about those. So I can't give you any advice on snakes big enough to eat your dog. But
I'm the same. I've camped and I've seen snakes within 10, 20 meters of the campsite go from bush on that side across the track to the bush on the other side. So they're there. Don't camp in those leafy, bushy spots where they can hide. Try and camp in a clearing and just be aware that they're there. Zips on the tents where you can, put the zipper to the top or make sure the zips are closed up really tight so that vermin, spiders, anything can't get in through that zipper.
I think sometimes we've had some gear returned to Snowy's sort of on a warranty claim, which wasn't a warranty claim because mice had just chewed straight through it. Like silicone food tubs and sort of all sorts of stuff. But it's just one of those situations where there are going to be certain areas of the country or certain times of year where mice will be more of an issue than others. The only times that I've ever really had issues with mice and stuff at a campsite is when we've been in regions that are experiencing a bit of a mice plague. Mm-hmm. Generally outside of that, there's really no issue. I mean, sometimes campsites we've had possums come in at night, but again, that's just a matter of making sure that all of your food tubs are, you know, you've got clickable lock food tubs and your rubbish is away and things like that.
I've had issues with mice twice.
Yes.
Which is still a very small percentage compared to the amount of nights I spent camped out.
Correct, yeah.
They can be the pits they've got in the car.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to stop mice from getting into the car because there are so many spots that they can just find their way in. And I remember hearing them running around between the roof lining and the roof. So, and I had like polystyrene coming out of my air vents and stuff. So they were making a nest in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And every time I turned the air conditioner on, I was obviously blowing their nest away and then they had to go and make it again. So I had a car full of polystyrene. So somewhere in my car, there's
never gets old,
polystyrene that is supposed to be somewhere that isn't anymore.
Yes.
I caught it with a trap. If you haven't seen it, check out my big lap.
Ben Half Lap episode.
We
don't
made
know
a
what
little
number
trap
it is.
out of water bottles and caught them with some Nutella. I won't go through the whole story again. I think I told it on that episode.
Yeah,
I
you did.
Stood up trying to. So I started trying to catch them, but try and catch them sooner than later because they will make your car stink.
Yes.
Otherwise, keep everything locked up.
Yep.
You got anything more on that one? Got a part two?
No, I don't really think I have anything more on that one. So the second question that Gerard has asked, or Jared, things to keep in the emergency kit, e.g., I don't know if that's a typo or if an emergency kit is
an emergency in case of emergency.
Yeah.
Get your emergency.
Probably some sort of efficient zombie weapon in an emergency kit. Yeah. But in a normal singular emergency kit, zip ties, duct tapes, etc. Yep, absolutely.
He's pretty much covered off.
Yeah, zip ties, duct tape. That's about it. We did do an episode which isn't directly about this, but episode 68 we did with Kev was spare bits for your caravan kit, emergency stuff. I'd probably say most of what he talked about in that episode that he has in his kit is one that everybody should have. It's just things like fuses, zip ties, tape, sort of a whole range of different sorts of things. Obviously, you're going to have a first aid kit, an emergency sort of first aid kit, which is I would think about as maybe differently to an emergency kit.
Yeah, I'm
not
assuming
sure.
We're talking about emergency equipment.
Yeah, but things like, for example, a PLB is definitely something to have in an emergency kit, medical or otherwise. Also ration packs or just some dehydrated food just in case. And it also depends on your trip. Like obviously if you're just heading down to your local Big Four, you really don't need to worry about it because if there's any sort of emergency, you just walk over to the phone. But if you're heading somewhere more outback or remote, then you're going to want to have different things. So things like ration packs, water store, like just water store that you just agree not to touch unless it's an absolute emergency. One thing that we have is, and I know we talked about it in our CFS episode, is woolen blankets. Those vintage wool blankets. They're really great for a whole range of different reasons. Not only are they warm, but they're excellent for fires and things like that as well.
So my kit, if I'm not talking about the emergency, so I've got first aid kit and I've got PLB, that's always in the car, but the emergency kit being a little tub that I've got tucked away in the back of my car with some emergency bits for repair. Zip ties and duct tape, WD-40.
Yep.
I also carry some spare wheel nuts, things that I need to basically help me limp into the next town if I need to.
Yeah, right.
Some spare hose clamps. And I now have a length of spare hose. Bit hard to carry all the hoses because they're all different sizes. But it was after REA come and help me with a blown radiator hose once. REA being our roadside service people, and he just had a length of hose. And he went, "Oh, that fits about right." And then he put clamps. He goes, "Oh, I should be right to drive."
If you got hose clamps, you can sort of make anything work, even if it's a bit bigger, right?
I drove around for weeks before I could get the right part for it, so it was fine. It worked. I just had this big long hose, but now I've taken that off and I've kept that. as an emergency. So you could probably limp into a town with that. I carry a spare fuel filter.
Okay,
because
good one.
common rail diesel, dirty fuel, just can get you back on the road again.
Yep.
I'm trying to think what else I've got in that kit. Just some random screws, bolts, fuses. I have a whole heap of, some electrical wire.
Yep.
Shrink wrap, blade things for stuff that you can just kind of MacGyver yourself out.
Yeah.
Bush mechanic yourself out
mechanic-y
of
style
trouble.
things, yeah.
You could go overboard, right? If you look at a list of what they say you should take,
you'd end up with something,
could take a lot of stuff. I think the best mindset is go out trying to take what you can, make sure your car's serviced and your caravan's in good nick. Go out with everything you need to try and get you out of trouble, but be aware that something might happen that you or your mechanic couldn't foresee.
Yeah.
And you might be stuck somewhere, and that's kind of part of that type of travel.
Yeah.
And you just need to then work it out. Either PLB or hopefully it's a phone reception or call on help to get a part or tow or whatever you need. That's probably a long-winded answer to that question. Next question.
So got a couple of questions left. So the next one is your turn?
Yes, you did part 2 of the last one. Not that I'm really counting, doesn't matter. I'm not quite sure how to say it. I'm assuming this is just the YouTube name, but Lamia girl. Thinking of getting a swag for an upcoming outback trip, but a shoulder injury means I need to get something light and easy to roll away. Any suggestions, or should I consider something else from a solo female user? Well, so we did touch on this briefly before the episode. A canvas swag with a 50 or 70 mil foam mat in it is going to require a bit of muscle to roll up.
It's not going to be light. It's not going to be easy to roll away.
And it's going to be bulky to kind of lug around. The one thing that both of us came up with was to go to the air pole technology side of things, and Dometic do a swag 2 different sizes called the Pico.
Yeah.
Now that's got a air-filled mat inside.
Yeah.
And it all pumps up from the mat pumps up independently of the poles. I forget now. I did the video on it and I forget how I set it up. But anyway, you only either require 1 or 2 valves to set it up. When you let all that out, you're not compressing foam to try and roll it up. You're just rolling up fabric. So it's really easy to pack away. You just roll it towards the open valve.
No
air
poles,
squeezes out.
nothing chunky.
Smaller package to lug around.
I think the single packs up into sort of like a day pack size on your back.
Yep.
And it comes with straps that you can chuck it onto your back like that too.
Yep. So I think for a solo female user, solo female traveler, that at the moment, that's probably a good option. Darchi do some air pole.
They do some air pole swags, but exactly the same scenario. It's going to be still that heavy canvas and it's going to have a thick foam mat in it.
Yep.
And they're going to be your barriers to ease of rolling things up. And if you've got a bung shoulder, it's going to make it a bit tricky.
Yep.
And I think also sometimes depending on who you are as a person, I know that I've got my hands are quite sort of broad, I guess solid-ish hands, but they are small, and I even find sometimes rolling a swag up tricky just purely because the span of my hands is small. And so if you have – and I have good grip strength as well. So if you are somebody who has sort of smaller hands or finer hands, potentially not a stronger grip strength, you're going to find it even harder than I find it. Yep. So just bear that in mind.
Your other option, I think, is to get a canvas swag, ditch the mat that comes with it, and get a self-inflating or air-filled hike type mat.
Even like those X-Bed Versus.
Yep.
For example.
Some of those with built-in pumps as well that are easy to set up. And you're going to find that just rolling the canvas by itself without the mat inside is going to be a whole lot easier.
That's a really good point.
And so those Pico swags are not cheap by any means. You may find that buying a basic swag and a mat might end up financially more affordable than the Pico swag. So the main thing I think there is that mat inside the swag being rolled up inside heavy canvas makes it hard. So that's where your barrier is going to be.
The only other thing I know that Lamia Girls specifically mentioned light and easy to roll away in regards to having a shoulder injury, but also bear in mind that if you're using a swag that has those traditional swag poles, putting the hoop poles in place on the pins and things like that can be quite tricky. It can require a fair bit of muscle to get the tension on them right and to bend them and fold them and lock them into place properly. So not sure if that's something that you've considered that may be an issue for your shoulder as well. And in that case, again, an air swag might be a better option. Alternatively, depending on whether or not you've got your heart set on an actual swag, if that's the style of camping that you want to do, then have a look at what we've talked about already. But then alternatively, you could look at something like the Swagger 1P, which is a small tent. It's like an instant up tent. It's literally just a matter of pulling 4 poles up and a spreader bar across and you set up. And then in that case, again, something like a light air-filled mat, which would reduce your pack size and weight. You just pop it in with your sleeping bag and your pillow.
More ideas come to mind. You could go to lightweight hike tents after that. So lots of different options.
But I feel like in terms of course, there are lightweight hike tents and things as well, but a lot of those are going to have the same things about sort of tensioning and putting poles into place and whatever, whereas something like the Swagger 1P is a very simple, straightforward sort of pop-up style tent, which might be worth looking at.
Yep. Next is you.
Ryan. So I think Ryan's asked this question in conjunction with another question that we've covered in an earlier episode. But this one is, my son Jack would like to know, what are some tips for camping with kids close to rivers and waterways? First things first, the biggest tip is to be around rivers and waterways from the minute they're born. Because in my experience, kids who grow up in those environments, you don't really need to worry about them because they're already aware of what the limitations are and the risks and how to behave around those areas, because that's what's been normalised and they don't know any different. So in terms of what tips or how to address that with camping with kids that have potentially never been to a river or never camped around waterways, I'm not sure. You're probably going to find that a bit more challenging. We used to camp and haven't for a fair while, but we used to do a couple of weeks next to the Darling River every year when my kids were really little, like newborns, toddlers, 4-year-old, things like that. In that instance, setting up camp, we're obviously sort of up on a very high bank. It was quite a long steep down to the river. And so it was, here's the boundary. You don't go down the bank. This is where we are. This is where we're in camp. And that was almost always respected. But then we also had life jackets. So anytime we were going fishing or there was any activities in or around or close to the water, they would just have a life jacket on. Also, when you're camping, if you're in your tent or your camper trailer, if you've got multiple access points, you can put just a cheap little combination padlock or something like that on zip tie even on doorway zips that potentially are exit points where the kids can get out without disturbing you, and wherever you sleep, sort of make sure the kids have to get past you to get through to that main entrance point, and doing your zips up tight and things like that. I think for the most part, those concerns or worries that people will have would be over a night time, because for the most part, you're going to have lots of other people around and that supervision element during the day. So safety is a big one. Yeah. Have those boundaries. I guess you got to feed their curiosity as well. If they want to go down there, tell them, if you want to go past this point, let me know. We'll go together, or we put a life jacket on. And I think explain the dangers of a river, the currents and the murky water, how it looks safe, but there's actually strong currents underneath. And I'm talking about the Murray River, which can look nice and calm, but there's actually currents underneath and you can disappear very quickly. Yeah. So I feel like I'm going into child psychology here a little bit, but if it was me, I'd explain to them what the dangers are, why I'm asking them not to go past this point. I don't want them not to explore that, but if you want to do it, we do it together. Yep. The other thing, because we've just mentioned waterways, which can obviously mean lakes and still areas. Mosquitoes are a big thing around still waterways. So go armed with repellent, mozzie coils, thermocell, anything you can to try and maintain the mozzies, because they will, if you don't create a space where it's reasonably mozzie free, you probably will get a few bites, but you've got to minimize it. You'll end up having a miserable trip. So yeah. I think also, camping next to rivers and waterways is also excellent because it gives the kids just a whole nother element of exploration and adventure to their trip.
Oh, it's fun, yeah.
So like fishing gear and like stand-up paddle boards or, you know, things that they can get in the water and muck around with. You know, we always do things like build a boat out of all your nature bits and pieces and bits of bark and have those sort of competitions and things like that. It's definitely a really great a great option.
Bird life, sunrise, sunset, all awesome.
All
when
of
it's
that sort of
calm,
stuff.
get the mist over the river. Enjoy all those bits.
Enjoy all those bits and don't sort of let it stop you, I guess.
No, I guess you know your kids best, so you know what boundaries you need to put in place for them for safety being the big one.
Yep.
All right, last question from Sarah, also on Facebook. Best/cheapest/easiest way to power a 35-litre fridge and charge phones, etc. for 4 to 5 nights without needing to drive around all day to charge something up. So confusing with all the different power stations, lithium versus AGM batteries, solar, etc., and they all have a hefty initial price tag, so you don't want to get it wrong.
I agree. It can be confusing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But
we did an episode on this, I think.
Best/cheapest/easiest, they're all different things.
Yeah. I think
so it depends what you want.
I think what you need, you got your fridge, you need a power bank. If you're only talking a 35-litre fridge and phones, you don't need hundreds and hundreds of amp hours. Like 40 to 100 amp hours is more than enough. And
you definitely need solar though for 5 nights.
Yep, and get a decent solar panel. So you can get cheap, but it's not going to be reliable. Best and easiest, I would say, they kind of go together. Get a power bank.
Like a portable power station.
So like Companion's Rover 40 or 100. A solar panel, and I say get as much solar as you can, like get a 200-watt panel. That's not going to be cheap. And that's pretty much all you're going to need. Like
seriously, I think Hardcore have got, I don't know if they call them they don't call them lifestyle range anymore, but what do they call them?
Yeah, they had an affordable. It's a grey and black.
It used to be
range.
lifestyle, and now it's something else. But they come in like a 200 and a 300 watt panel. For example, you know, if you're thinking about the easiest option and sort of still fits in that best category, you're not someone who's particularly technical. You don't want to worry about a dual battery setup and fix solar on your car and all the wiring and all that sort of hoo-ha. Exactly like you've said then, Ben, something like a Rover 100. And I'm going to go with a Rover 100 because I feel like if you're going away for 5 days camping, that's also going to cover you if you're going in the dead of winter and solar's not super reliable.
Yep.
Get a 200 or a 300 watt solar panel. Mm-hmm. Those Hardcore ones are a good option, not the croc skin ones, but the other in terms of performance and affordability.
Yep.
And a Rover 100 power station.
Yep.
And it's literally just a plug and play. You plug your solar panels into the power station, it charges up. You plug your fridge into the power station, it runs. You plug your phone into the USB outlet, they charge.
And this is a setup that you can take out of the car and set up in the campsite. Correct. If you want to set it up in your car, then that becomes a question of your auto electrician, where you can put a battery
if you want,
and
like
how you're going to charge that and the differences between the two batteries. You might need a battery management system, which is then going to cost more as well. So you're going down a more expensive path by doing that.
The only thing I would say is that I know that there's a range of different power stations out there from different suppliers and different brands and, you know, power stations on Amazon, and everyone's sort of got all these different new ones, and I think they're excellent. It's definitely a space that's developing and that there are more and more people that get into it. You're talking about things that are so confusing and you don't want to get it wrong, and I completely sympathise with that. A lot of those other power stations will have a 240-volt outlet. If you're just camping and you're just wanting to plug your fridge and charge your phones, you don't need that. So a lot of the time the additional cost is going to be to cover the expense of having an inverter and a 240-volt outlet within the power station. So you definitely don't need that. The only other thing to be mindful of, because recently in a camping group, somebody bought a power station and they spent like $1,400 on a power station, and it turned out that it only had like 16 usable amp hours in it because it was quite small, but it did have that sort of 240-volt outlet in it. So, but then they've spent money on something with 16 amp hours, which would power a fridge for less than a day without solar. because they didn't sort of quite understand the capacities and things like that. So if you're looking at a lithium power station, whatever the amp hours that it says, so for example, 100, the Rover 100, you're going to be having around about 80 usable.
Yep.
So it's around about 80% of the amp hours is what is your physical usable amp hours there.
Mm-hmm.
So bear that in mind. Look for a 12-volt one that's going to have a higher amp hour rating.
And we say avoid that if you don't really need to run two 40-volt appliances, then just don't do it, because they'll use all that power so much quicker than just sticking with 12-volt appliances. And
far less efficient. Also
important to note the batteries, just like the battery in your car, they all have a life. Eventually, you're going to need to replace them. So even if you set your car up with an auxiliary battery, it's going to need to be replaced probably 3 to 5 years. Like if you get 5 years out of a battery, then you're doing pretty well.
Most of them have like 2,000 life cycles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So loaded question, lots of different answers. We do have an article on the blog that I wrote quite a while ago to try and make this really simple. Pretty much covers what we said now. If you've got 200 to 300 watts of solar and 100 amp hours of battery power, then you can power what you're asking for here plus more. You get heaps of power. But we will try and remember to link that. We'll get Kato, our copywriter, to link that.
Add some notes in there for
notes
sure.
down the bottom if you want to have a read of that. And I don't know if we did another episode on it. We
haven't done a follow-up episode after our first one, which was a bit of a mess, but we'll
that's right. The tank analogy. Yeah. Don't watch that because
it'll make you even more confused.
It was a
shocker.
Train wreck.
Yeah. Anyway, hopefully that helps a bit, Sarah. Also, feel free to give us a buzz anytime if you need to sort of talk through some more specifics.
Yep. Or jump on the Facebook group.
Correct. Yeah.
We don't know it, or if we answer wrong, someone will correct us.
Someone else will get in there too.
It's the beauty of that group. That's it. That's our Q&A questions. Probably all for season 4, assuming we can get enough content otherwise to keep us going. Otherwise, we'll just ask again and answer Maria questions, because I quite enjoy doing these.
Yeah, I really like them as well.
Opens up your mind to thinking about your own setups and how you would do things.
For sure.
All right. Thanks again for watching. As you mentioned at the start of the show, subscribe via YouTube or your favorite podcast app if you just listen in, and please ask to join the Facebook group if you want to join in on the conversation. But until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you
soon.
Next time.
And on that note, goodbye.
See you later.